Hey guys, if you're playing this video while your eyes are bloodshot, your hands reaching for the dim light button, and your brain's trying to forget a deadline, then welcome. Tonight we're diving into a strange journey in Greek mythology about Jason and the Argonauts on their quest for the Golden Fleece. Jason was the son of Aeson, the rightful heir to the golden throne of Iolcus. However, Peleus, Aeson's half-brother, seized the throne and threw Aeson into the dungeon. A prophecy from Delphi warned Peleus that Aeson's descendant would take revenge on him, believing Jason was the one the prophecy spoke of. Peleus came up with a plan. Send Jason on a mission so impossible it might as well be a polite execution. Bring back the Golden Fleece from the land of Colchis. Before you get too comfy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I'm doing here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is over there. It's always amazing to see people from all over the world joining us. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that gentle background noise. And let's begin our journey tonight. Back then, in the land of Orchomenus, there was a king named Athamas. If you've never heard of him, don't worry. He wasn't famous for ruling well, but for marrying the wrong person. Twice. First, he married Noctory, a wonderful wife, gentle and slightly cloudy. No joke. Her name literally means cloud, because Zeus made her out of cloud to resemble Hera. Yes, Hera suspected Zeus was cheating, so Zeus created a cloud replica of her and gave it to some random king to calm things down. And so, Noctory ended up with Athamas. They had 2 kids, Phryxus and Helle, smart, beautiful, and statistically doomed if you live in Greek mythology. Everything was fine, until Athamas got bored. Maybe because she was made of clouds, or maybe because back then, loyalty was treated like a disease. He left Noctory, sent her back to the sky, or at least out of the palace, and married Ino, a new wife who was very human, very ambitious, and very cruel. Ino didn't like her husband's kids from his first marriage. Of course, you only need a little power, a little jealousy, and a big cauldron, and you've got yourself a textbook mythological stepmother. With her toxic creativity, Ino devised a plan. She would cause famine in the kingdom. She secretly altered the oracle from Delphi to say, the only way to end the famine is to sacrifice Phryxus and Helle to the gods. Phryxus and Helle, 2 innocent kids, were dragged to the altar. No one asked if they wanted to be offerings. No one asked how Noctory felt. Only the wind blew, the people prayed, and the 2 children looked at each other, realizing that no one was on their side. And right then, Noctory appeared. Maybe she was real. Maybe it was just Cloud carrying a mother's cry. But in that final moment, a golden winged ram descended from the sky. No one knew who sent it. Maybe Hera, maybe Zeus, maybe just a god who liked plot twists. The ram landed, grabbed the 2 children, and flew skyward, leaving behind an empty altar, a silent crowd, and a stepmother, whose plan just fell apart. On the ram's back, Phryxus and Helle flew eastward, not knowing where, only knowing they had to go far away from a place called home that had no warmth. But this is mythology. and journeys are never whole. The wind grew strong. Hela lost her grip. She fell into the sea, died among the waves in the place now known as the Hellespont, Hela's Strait. As for Phrixus, he held on, barely, and flew all the way to the kingdom of Colchis, the farthest edge of the known Greek world. King Aeetes of Colchis welcomed Phrixus as an honored guest. Phrixus offered the golden ram as thanks, and the golden fleece was hung on a sacred tree, guarded by a sleepless dragon, deep within a sacred forest, as a token of faith, of sacrifice, and of the things we're forced to lose just to survive. And that's how the story begins, not with triumph, but with an escape, not with a hero, but with two children betrayed. A flying sheep is a concept that only Greek mythology would consider perfectly normal, with shimmering golden wings and fleece as bright as the morning sun. That divine sheep wasn't just an escape vehicle. It was the last bit of faith a mother could send to her children when grown-ups had stopped acting like grown-ups. On the sheep's back, Phrixus and Hela didn't say a word. They didn't need to. The way they clung to each other, to the fleece, to that fragile hope, already said all the things kids aren't usually allowed to say. Below them was the sea, not the Santorini tourist blue kind, but a wild, cold, windy sea, the kind that says, if you fall, you don't come back up. The wind roared, the sheep swayed, and as they neared the eastern shore, something happened, too fast for any god to intervene. Hela lost her grip. That moment had no soundtrack, no dramatic lighting, just the sound of a slip, and then silence. The place where she fell became known as the Hellespont, Sea of Hela, a way for mythology to keep the name of someone who disappeared, because no one held her hand when she was alive. And in that exact moment, before her body dropped into the salty water, Hela thought of her mother. She remembered lullabies soft as clouds, a gentle hand wiping tears the first time she scraped her knee, and her brother's face ahead, still unaware she had just let go. There was no panic, just regret, and a tiny message, never sent. You have to live to tell the story. Then she fell. The sea opened, like the palm of a once kind god who had grown tired. Phrixus didn't dare look back. He clung to the sheep's back, heart pounding like a drum, and whispered something into the wind. Maybe her name, maybe an apology. The sheep kept flying, because that was the order, because at the end of this journey, a piece of fate was still waiting. They landed in Colchis, a distant kingdom at the edge of the known Greek world. Colchis, where the sun rises half a beat slower than the rest of Greece. Here, grass grows in spiral mazes. Rivers flow backward into the forest instead of toward the sea. And the oldest trees are said to have once heard gods whisper at midnight. This land didn't get many visitors, and when strangers did arrive, the locals would look at them as if fate had just knocked on their door with wet hands, not because they were hostile, but because in Colchis, people believed that anything from afar brings disaster, or destiny, or both. King Aeetes, a man with a beard like waves and a temper like a sleeping volcano, greeted Phrixus with a diplomatic smile. Phrixus, with nothing but gratitude and the sheep's fleece, offered the magical creature to the king, and then married his daughter. That's right. In Greek mythology, all it takes to get a wife is to show up with a mythical animal, and the fleece was hung on a sacred oak deep in the forest, guarded by a dragon, huge, smoke-breathing, and terribly insomniac. No one knew what Phrixus thought. Watching the fleece that once saved his life now hung up like a trophy. But once a year, no one remembers exactly when, Phrixus would walk to the shore, alone. No wife, no king, no servants. He would sit by the waves, sometimes doing nothing, just listening. And if anyone happened to come close, they might hear him whisper a name, not loudly, just enough for the wind to catch it. The name was Helle. There was no monument, no song, just a brother keeping a space for his sister in the world, with silence. And no one asked, because in Kolkis, surviving was enough, but survival sometimes is a form of suffering. Phrixus never said what it felt like, but every time the sunlight hit that fleece, he remembered how he once clung to it in fear, how he once shared it with a sister who was no longer there. No one blamed him. No one asked him to tell the story, but Phrixus knew deep down he was the only survivor of a journey built for two, and that wasn't glory. It was a kind of memory that wouldn't dissolve. As for Helle, no one spoke of her. Only the sea still whispered. Sometimes the wind would rise like the sound of someone slipping, and the salt water still stung like the tears of children forced to grow up too soon. The story wasn't over. It had just begun, on a moonless night, while everyone slept. The wind from the Hellespont drifted toward Kolkis. Phrixus dreamed, and in that hazy dream, he saw Helle, not as she was when she fell, but Helle as a child, on a swing, calling his name in the afternoon sun. The dream had no sound, only feeling, a warmth, a chill, then emptiness. When he woke, Phrixus told no one. He just went to the shore, wrote her name in the sand, and watched the waves wash it away. And on the other side of the world, in a far-off valley of Iolkos, another boy also woke up from a dream where someone called his name in the dark. A dream with no image, only a voice repeating, "Jason, Jason, Jason." Part of the fleece had fallen into the sea, part was given to the king, and part now lay quietly inside the heart of Jason, a young man who had never seen a flying sheep, but would carry the legacy of all that was lost. Do you know what it feels like to cause panic the moment you're born? Jason does. From the very first minute of his life, he was at the center of a prophecy, a plot to kill a king and a sandal. Other babies were wrapped in swaddling clothes. Jason, he was wrapped in a dilemma. The story begins in Iolkos, a place where the throne changed hands as often as bunk beds in a college dorm. There was a legitimate king named Aeson, but power was in the hands of his brother Peleus, the kind of guy who temporarily takes over and forgets to give it back. Peleus was a classic Greek myth character. No magic, no dragons, but a knack for causing massive social instability. He had heard a prophecy that one day a man wearing only one sandal would bring about his downfall. It's unclear why the gods chose such an ambiguous visual cue, but Peleus believed it. Believed it so much that he shuddered whenever he saw someone wearing mismatched sandals. So when Jason was born, Aeson knew his son wouldn't have a peaceful future if he stayed at the palace. That night, Aeson didn't cry. He didn't plead. He simply held his newborn son, wrapped him in a rough cloth, not to keep him warm, but to hide him from fate. He kissed his son's forehead and lingered there a moment longer, as if trying to imprint this memory, just in case there wouldn't be another chance. No farewell words, just the sound of a stone door opening and a life beginning by being hidden away. Like a virus file, Jason was concealed. Not in a hard drive, but in the wilderness, sent to Chiron, a centaur who knew how to heal, educate, and keep secrets exceptionally well. Chiron didn't ask many questions. Before teaching, he observed. Jason lived in a small cave in the forest, where mornings were greeted not by rooster crows, but by the sound of wind and dry leaves falling on the rocky roof. He learned to tie a bowstring before he knew how to tie his hair. Learned to light a fire in the rain, hunt rabbits when hungry, and listen when the world was silent. Chiron didn't tell bedtime stories or fairy tales, just exercises, and occasionally a slice of honey cake if Jason didn't spill any water that day. That boy gradually grew into someone the wilderness trusted, and Chiron knew one day Jason would have to leave because the mountains couldn't keep someone destined by prophecy. He simply said, "I taught him how to live. As for fate, I don't interfere." And so Jason grew up like an offline version, unknown to anyone, remembered by none, except the gods, especially Hera. Hera didn't like Peleus, because Peleus didn't respect the gods, didn't offer proper sacrifices, and especially didn't like powerful women. So when Jason grew up strong, polite, and with righteous muscles, Hera looked and said, "This boy is worth betting on." But betting comes with rules. Hera couldn't help Jason too much. Only 5 times. No more, no less, no backups, 5 assists, for a journey spanning half the map of Greek mythology. And the journey began with a shallow puddle and an old woman needing help. Jason, in his first time leaving the forest, didn't encounter dragons or monsters, but an old lady struggling to cross a stream. Unaware that this was Hera in disguise, Jason carried her across the stream and lost a sandal. Not a magical sandal, not even a brand name one. Just a pair he'd worn since leaving the cave, the only remnant of a childhood scented with pine resin and honey cake. When the sandal slipped off in the stream, he turned to look just for a second unnoticed by anyone. But in Jason's heart, that was the moment he realized he'd stepped out of his final protection. From now on, every step was a step into the prophecy. Peleus saw the young man wearing one sandal and nearly choked on his rosewater. Jason, setting foot in Iolcos for the first time, was oblivious to the stares directed at him. He was overwhelmed by the crowd, the towering walls, the shouting vendors, and the mingling scents of perfume and grilled goat. This was his first time seeing a real city. To Jason, everything was magical, until the king panicked. Peleus didn't see a young man. He saw the sign of his personal apocalypse, the one-sandaled man. And the haunting prophecy, as chilling as the scent of extinguished candles during a festival night, the prophecy, the sandal, and destiny had just walked into the city with one bare foot. Jason, unaware, just stood there, smiling. And Hera, somewhere, was checking off the first in her help log. A dropped sandal causing a kingdom-wide faint. Classic mythology. Dramatic addition. She smirked. Hera flipped her divine notebook. Help 1. Played the role of a waterlogged old lady, remaining 4 assists. Note: no aggressive interference, no dragon summoning, no plot spoilers. She rested her chin on her hand, gazing down from the clouds. Jason, you have no idea. This is just the opening act. And the sky remained clear. Peleus wasn't stupid. He knew Jason was destiny, but he also knew how to push destiny far away. If you're truly chosen by the gods, then go fetch the golden fleece from distant cold cheese. Said as if asking someone to buy early season durians. Jason, barely comprehending, nodded. He didn't know where Colchis was, what the fleece smelled like, or why it was golden. He only knew the one-sandaled man had just been assigned an unrefusable task. Hera, at the nearest divine station, nodded. Second assist, commencing. She sent a signal to Argus, the best shipbuilder in the land, with skills surpassing standard carpentry and an extraordinary tolerance for rambling. Argus received the mythological order and began constructing a ship, named after himself. The Argo had a flexible hull, durable sails, and, thanks to Hera requesting a special favor from Zeus, a talking prow. And the prow talked a lot. Its voice was deep, slightly hoarse, sounding like an old uncle who'd witnessed too many shipwrecks and was now living a grumpy retirement. All aboard. Don't line up like you're on a pilgrimage. Don't tie the anchor rope like that. That knot's only good for hanging sausages. Won't hold anything. Orpheus tried to play his lyre, but the prow interjected. It's not lunchtime yet, sweetheart. Jason could only sigh. We haven't even set sail, and my head's already pounding like a level 8 sea storm. Now a temporary leader. Jason began recruiting. He brought a list of serious questions. Do you have seafaring experience? Can you survive 3 days without fire? Do you often go berserk when hungry? Heracles walked in first, sat down, and propped his feet on the interview table as if waiting for a shoulder massage. Jason asked, "Any special skills?" Heracles replied simply, "I once tore a lion in half. Does that count?" Jason nodded, checked A in the column. The next interview with Zeitz, who had wings on his shoulders, was interrupted when the wind from his wings blew all the documents away. Jason thought to himself, maybe I should ask fewer questions and just go with my gut. Jason looked at the list of names, long as Hera's birthday wish list to Zeus, and sighed. He wondered, if I don't have superpowers, will they see me as a leader? Around him were Heracles flexing his biceps, Atalanta tying her hair like preparing for a match, Orpheus tuning his lyre and making doves cry. And Jason only had memories of the mountains, a lost sandal, and an incomprehensible prophecy. I was just chosen. doesn't mean I'm ready. And this wasn't a regular recruitment. Job posting. Seeking heroic companions for a mythological treasure hunt includes food, sleep, high risk of death. Preference, those with superpowers, nice biceps, or currently unemployed. In less than 3 days, the harbour was as crowded as a cosplay festival. Every supporting character in Greek mythology flocked in, as if Jason was hosting a reality show called Who Wants to Be a Hero? Heracles came because he heard they'd be fighting. Orpheus brought his lyre and sad eyes. Atalanta, the female athlete no one dared to race. Castor and Pollux, the twin brothers with the power of handsome and skilled. Zates and Calais, 2 young men who could fly thanks to genetic inheritance with wings. Meliger, Laertes, Peleus, Augeas, Idmon, and a bunch of others. Names hard to remember, but very serious. A total of 50 people, 1 ship, and enough personalities to write 7 seasons of a TV series. On the very first morning, Heracles lifted the anchor as a dumbbell. Orpheus played love songs for dolphins. Atalanta ran laps around the deck, leaving gusts of wind. Jason, the leader, was debating whether to assign sleeping quarters by gender, strength, or zodiac sign. Meanwhile, from the 9th cloud layer, Hera watched like a game show producer who just finished casting the main characters. All right, cast complete, plot ready, conflict, wait a few days to unfold. Then Hera mused, Jason, you don't need to be the strongest. Just be the last one standing. She didn't smile. Just gently pulled a cloud closer to shade the Argo. The crew was complete, spirits high, and the Argo set sail with hope. No one heard the command. Heracles thought the ship's horn was a strength test, so he yanked the anchor rope, causing it to snap. Orpheus started the journey's background music too early, making some people cry without knowing why. Atalanta ran around the deck, nearly toppling the departure soup pot. Jason stood amidst it all, holding the map, unsure which direction to point, heart pounding like giving a graduation speech without writing it. The Argo's prow muttered, I've led expeditions before, but this bunch is a new breed and 0 plans. After 3 days adrift, eating dry bread and drinking water flavored with hope, the Argo crew landed at their first stop, the island of Lemnos, and the first scent that hit their noses was the smell of people. Not just any people. People who'd been without men for a very, very long time. Lemnos was a strange island. No men, no razors, no intention of welcoming guests. Why? Because all the men who used to live here had been murdered by their wives. Why the murders? Because the men went off having affairs and came home without even bothering to bathe or pretend to be decent. So the women of Lemnos, led by Queen Hypsipyle, decided, fine, we'll just do everything ourselves. And they meant it. They killed them all, ran the island, made their own salt, grew their own crops, and even synced up their menstrual cycles to the moon. Jason and his buddies arrived like deer wandering into a lion's den wearing perfume. From afar, they saw nothing but women, strong, sharp-eyed, holding crossbows, and dressed in styles that hadn't been updated since the Trojan War. Heracles whispered, "This place smells spicy." Orpheus strummed a soft tune. Atalanta raised an eyebrow. "Interesting." Jason was invited to meet the queen, and Hypsipyle didn't talk much. She just looked him up and down. "Did you shower?" Jason blushed. "I waded through the sea yesterday." Then he realized he was being inspected head to toe. Hypsipyle's gaze was like a myth-level B.O. detector. A woman nearby scribbled notes: toenails clean, slightly sunburned skin, overall not bad. Another asked, "Any genetic conditions?" Jason hesitated. "I sleepwalk a bit, but I haven't hurt anyone." They nodded and kept writing. Jason was starting to feel less like a guest hero, more like a goat being evaluated for selective breeding. Meanwhile, in Lemnos's central plaza, an emergency council meeting was underway. Hypsipyle stood in the center of a circle of advisors. The question, do we let these guys stay? An elderly woman raised her hand. "I'm in favor, but only if they shower 3 times and we check their toenails." Someone else chimed in, "And they must know how to harvest vegetables, build a fire, and be emotionally open." A younger girl said, "I vote yes, as long as they're not dumb." Finally, the council agreed. Trial period, 7 days. If they pass the emotional and body odor tests, we'll talk. The Argonauts had no idea they were the main characters in a semi-mythological social experiment. Jason was invited into a private room. Dim lighting, soft chair, and the smell of lavender. An older woman with a serious face sat across from him. In front of her, a notebook and a felt-tip pen. "We'd like to ask a few questions, just to verify fatherhood potential." Jason choked on his tea. The woman nodded and began to write. "Are you allergic to children? Can you lull a baby to sleep by singing? Have you ever changed a diaper?" Jason gulped and stammered. "I once played with a baby goat, if that counts." The woman smiled. "All right, we'll take it under review." Outside, the Argonaut crew started to feel something was off. At first, Heracles was thrilled. "I heard this is a woman's paradise. Imagine the possibilities." 3 days later, Heracles began meditating every morning. "I keep dreaming about being interrogated on my 5-year child-rearing plan." Orpheus composed a ballad titled "She Doesn't Need Me, Just My Metrics." Zates and Calais kept flying up to avoid private interview invitations. One night, Meliga whispered, "I thought we were searching for the Golden Fleece. Why do I feel like I'm auditioning to be Husband of the Year?" Leaving Lemnos with lingering fragrances and a few unanswered questions, the Argo crew continued their journey and arrived at the Bay of Cyzicus, a place so peaceful it felt suspicious. They were warmly welcomed by King Cyzicus, a polite young man, clean-skinned, didn't ask about reproduction, and most importantly, knew how to invite guests to dinner. Jason quietly thought, there are still decent people in this world. The sailors were invited to a feast. There was grape wine, honey cakes, big jam, and a flute player who wasn't terrible. Everything was so cozy, it felt suspicious. But when night fell, things spun like an oar out of rhythm. A storm broke out. The Argo was swept out to sea and then drifted back, still in Cyzicus, but under the cover of darkness, and no one recognized each other. seeing strangers invading. Cyzicus's soldiers attacked. Feeling attacked, the Argo sailors fought back. And in the wind and rain, chaos exploded. No one knew who was who. Jason, soaked, hands trembling, still holding a wooden sword he'd never swung before, found himself face to face with King Cyzicus, who had rushed out to stop the fight. Jason staggered. A flash of lightning lit up his sword. Cyzicus raised his hand, and Jason, out of fear, reflex, a slippery grip, swung his sword down. A light contact, not a deep cut, but enough for Cyzicus to stumble back, then fall, lips still trying to say, "Jason." Jason knelt down, hand gripping the wooden sword now muddy and bloody. Cyzicus was still warm. Jason whispered, I thought it was a pirate. One unintentional strike, one misplaced step, one sigh that cut through the night. King Cyzicus died by Jason's hand. The next morning, when the fog cleared and light revealed the truth, everyone was speechless. Jason stammered, "I didn't know." The people of Cyzicus mourned. Orpheus said nothing. He simply walked to the center of the square, sat down and hugged his lyre. Not a farewell song, not a heroic ballad, just a series of quiet notes, like the sound of dew falling on stone. Everyone stopped. The crying ceased. Even the wind seemed to pause to listen. Orpheus played each note as if piecing together Cyzicus's soul back into the earth. No one knew what the song was called, but everyone felt their hearts. Softer, heavier, emptier. Heracles sighed. "This is why I hate the rain." He sat on the stone steps, large hands unsure where to go. "I can snap a giant serpent's neck, lift a stone gate, but I can't stop a misguided swing. Can't stop a mistake when no one sees clearly." Jason didn't answer. No one did. Because real pain is when no words can undo what's already been done. They held a funeral. Jason personally dug the grave. The whole crew wore white, not for the gods, but because they couldn't bear to look each other in the eye. No eulogies were read, no songs sung, just the soft hiss of wind and the sound of soil covering silence. Jason bowed his head deeply, not out of reverence, but because he couldn't face the eyes of anyone, living or lost. Orpheus didn't play. Heracles said no more. Atalanta turned away, covering her face, as if not looking might make the guilt smaller. King Cyzicus was buried in silence, because sometimes no words are the truest kind. The Argo departed once again. No music, no feasts, no goodbyes, only the sea, strangely quiet, and Hera, from afar, fell silent too. The next divine assist. Maybe it's time Jason learns the word tragedy. After Cyzicus, the Argo crew was like a group of insomniacs. They didn't talk much, didn't celebrate, and avoided commenting on the weather. Jason, who had just learned that even heroes can misstrike, now simply watched the waves in silence. And then they reached the shores of Mysia. No king, no welcome, just green trees and sweet fresh spring water. Heracles, as usual, was hungry. Hylas, the young man who followed Heracles, wasn't like anyone else on the ship. No bulging muscles, didn't speak loudly, didn't laugh like a buffoon. He was beautiful, in a way that made the wind pause a few seconds just to look. skin pale like milk cakes dried in dew, light curls, high cheekbones, the kind of walk that looked like he was gliding across silk. Orpheus once teased, "You should be singing or doing pottery or marrying into royalty somewhere, not rowing a boat with a bunch of bearded dudes." And maybe he was right. Hylas, the elegant young man tagging along on an epic quest, volunteered to fetch water. Orpheus joked, "Careful, these springs are more seductive than my poetry." Hylas smiled, hoisted the water jug, and vanished into the woods. Then, didn't come back. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Heracles started to stand up. He doesn't have hiking shoes, and he can't swim. The whole crew surged. Jason blew a horn to signal. Orpheus climbed a tree and called his name. Atalanta even shot a flare arrow, though no one knew what that was supposed to do. And then they found the jug lying beside a still spring. No footprints, no signs of struggle, just the scent of lavender, a floating lotus, and a surface of water that seemed to be smiling. No one knew it, but someone had already touched the water, a skin faint as smoke, a hand cold but gentle. A whisper echoed beneath the surface, "Shall we keep you here?" Then all sound ceased. Not because of magic, but because Hylas himself, looking into those watery eyes, smiled as if he'd finally found where he belonged. Heracles didn't scream or cry. He silently took off his shirt, dove into the water, and searched all night long. But don't think he was calm. For the first time, Heracles wasn't a hero. He was a brother. He waded until his feet bled, said Hylas's name like a chant, turned over every bush, every crevice in the rocks. What good is all my strength if I can't pull someone out of calm water? Heracles' voice, for the first time, didn't boom. It broke. The next morning, Jason walked to the spring and found Heracles still there, red-eyed, scratched hands, refusing to leave. He called me brother. I should have gone with him. Jason placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. I know, but some beauty isn't meant to be held. The whole crew stood in silence behind them. No one rushed. No one told Heracles to get back on the ship. Maybe each of them had once watched Hylas brush his hair on the ship's edge. Someone had once quietly placed a honey cake in his meal tray. Someone, maybe Orpheus, had written a song they never dared perform. And now, no one could hold on. Because beauty comes and goes like a shooting star, flickers once and leaves behind a permanent emptiness. The Argo sailed on. Without Heracles, he stayed, because sometimes what we lose isn't just a person, it's the reason we kept moving forward. After the loss named Hylas, the Argo crew fell into a state where no one wanted to speak. Until they landed at Bebryces, a place that looked peaceful but was clearly radiating boxing god energy. Jason got off the ship, planning to negotiate gently as usual. But the moment they stepped onto the dock, they were greeted by King Amycus, a man whose chest looked like a stone table, neck like a temple pillar, and hands larger than the ship's steering wheel. When he walked, the ground trembled slightly. Locals had signs on their houses that clearly stated, It is not advised to stare at the king's muscles for more than 3 seconds. Shoulders like bronze gongs. Abs like a fortress wall lined with veins. Amicus didn't look like a man, but like a glitched version of the god Ares with an optional feature to smash ships using his jaw. Amicus roared, "Anyone stepping foot on this land must fight me one-on-one. No fight, no water, no water, no leaving." Jason frowned. Is there someone else we could talk to? Like a minister of foreign affairs, maybe? Amicus growled, "My water policy is this." The whole crew turned to look at each other. Everyone was tired. Everyone was thirsty. Everyone was still digesting grief. Orpheus suggested, "What if I sing him to sleep and we sneak away?" Atalanta frowned. "I've shot wolves, but I've never punched someone 6'7" tall." Jason flipped through his notebook. Did anyone take boxing in Athens? No. Cool. Great. The crew's vibe was like a talent show audition gone wrong. And then a voice rang out, "I'll fight." It was Pollux, one of the Castor and Pollux twins. A guy who usually didn't stand out until he took off his shirt. And when he took off his shirt, oh dear, tight back, broad shoulders, hands fast like shadows. Amicus burst out laughing. A child entering a boxing match. "All right, let's go." The match began. No bell, no referee, just 2 men, a ring of sand, and a sweaty crowd. Amicus attacked like thunder. Pollux dodged like wind. First punch, missed. Second, slipped. Third, hit, nothing. Amicus started losing patience. Pollux kept smiling. "You punch as well as you speak." That last swing almost hit. A summer breeze. Maybe close your eyes. Maybe your instincts will work better. Amicus roared, punching more wildly. Pollux was still dancing like he was waltzing with the air. That was enough to make Amicus explode and lose his balance. Right at that moment, Pollux landed a left hook so precise, it was like a poem by Orpheus. Amicus hit the ground. The people of Bebryces stood stunned. One mumbled, I always believed in Pollux, even though he had just been cheering for Amicus moments ago. Another shouted, "This is a true hero," then quickly ripped the Amicus undefeated banner and stuffed it into a bush. Then, applause. Then, water jugs opened. Then, the bread came out. Jason approached Pollux. Not exactly diplomacy, but effective. Pollux shrugged. Sometimes, what you need isn't reason. It's a fast left hand. The Argo ship left Bebryces full of water, a few bruises, and a little dignity sewn back together by Pollux's tight-lipped smile. After the loss named Hylas, the Argo crew fell into a state where no one wanted to speak until they landed at Bebryces, a place that looked peaceful but was clearly radiating boxing god energy. Jason got off the ship, planning to negotiate gently as usual. But the moment they stepped onto the dock, they were greeted by King Amicus, a man whose chest looked like a stone table, neck like a temple pillar, and hands larger than the ship's steering wheel. When he walked, the ground trembled slightly. Locals had signs on their houses that clearly stated, "It is not advised to stare at the king's muscles for more than 3 seconds. Shoulders like bronze gongs, abs like a fortress wall, lined with veins. Amicus didn't look like a man, but like a glitched version of the god Ares." with an optional feature to smash ships using his jaw. Amicus roared, "Anyone stepping foot on this land must fight me one-on-one. No fight, no water, no water, no leaving." Jason frowned. "Is there someone else we could talk to? Like a Minister of Foreign Affairs, maybe?" Amicus growled, "My water policy is fists." The whole crew turned to look at each other. Everyone was tired. Everyone was thirsty. Everyone was still digesting grief. Orpheus suggested, "What if I sing him to sleep and we sneak away?" Atalanta frowned. "I've shot wolves, but I've never punched someone 6'7" tall." Jason flipped through his notebook. "Did anyone take boxing in Athens?" "No." "Cool. Great." The crew's vibe was like a talent show audition gone wrong. And then a voice rang out, "I'll fight." It was Pollux, one of the Castor and Pollux twins. A guy who usually didn't stand out until he took off his shirt. And when he took off his shirt, oh dear, tight back, broad shoulders, hands fast like shadows. Amicus burst out laughing. A child entering a boxing match. "All right, let's go." The match began. No bell, no referee, just two men, a ring of sand, and a sweaty crowd. Amicus attacked like thunder. Pollux dodged like wind. First punch, missed. Second, slipped. Third, hit, nothing. Amicus started losing patience. Pollux kept smiling. "You punch as well as you speak." That last swing almost hit. A summer breeze. "Maybe close your eyes. Maybe your instincts will work better." Amicus roared, punching more wildly. Pollux was still dancing like he was waltzing with the air. That was enough to make Amicus explode and lose his balance. Right at that moment, Pollux landed a left hook so precise, it was like a poem by Orpheus. Amicus hit the ground. The people of Bebryces stood stunned. One mumbled, I always believed in Pollux, even though he had just been cheering for Amicus moments ago." Another shouted, "This is a true hero," then quickly ripped the Amicus undefeated banner and stuffed it into a bush. Then, applause. Then, water jugs opened. Then, the bread came out. Jason approached Pollux. Not exactly diplomacy, but effective. Pollux shrugged. "Sometimes, what you need isn't reason. It's a fast left hand." The Argo ship left Bebryces full of water, a few bruises, and a little dignity sewn back together by Pollux's tight-lipped smile. Leaving Bebryces, the Argo crew thought they'd get a few days to rest, bandage up, and digest the gifted bread, but mythology, as always, said no. Winds rose, fog rolled in, and they crashed into the shore of Thrace. Jason stepped off the ship, this time saying nothing, just signaling with his hand, "Brace yourselves." On a hill nearby was a scene straight out of a horror movie. An old man, skin and bone, hair silver and standing on end, swatting at huge black birds the size of small dogs with his bare hands. "Get out." "Leave me alone. Let me eat my egg porridge in peace." That was Phineas, a prophet who once dared to reveal Zeus's plans and was punished by having harpies dive bomb him every time he tried to eat. Orpheus hissed, "What kind of birds eat egg porridge? Do they have any decency?" Jason nodded. "We'll help, but this time, no fighting. We use brains." Castor and Pollux prepped the nets. Zates and Calais, the winged twins, got ready to take off. Atalanta readied her bow, but was gently reminded. This is a live bird mission, not a rotisserie one. When the harpies swooped down again, Zates and Calais took off, chasing them out to sea, shouting threats and promising to file complaints on Mount Olympus. Finally, the birds fled. Phineas slumped down, tears dripping into his porridge. For the first time in 10 years, I finished a meal. He told them of how he'd eaten inside jars with a pot lid on his head. Other times, he'd tie the porridge to a rope and eat while running, like a marathon coach. They fly fast, and they have no shame. That one time I made cheesy scrambled eggs. They stole the whole pan. Orpheus tilted his head. I'm starting to pity the porridge. The whole crew nodded. Maybe for the first time, they saw a prophet survive by sheer persistence and dodging skills. Grateful, Phineas shared extremely valuable info. To reach Colchis, you must pass the clashing rocks. 2 giant boulders that slam into each other like that video of 2 goats refusing to back down. Jason gulped. The group gathered by the shore, using a rock to represent the clashing rocks. Orpheus scattered pebbles to make a model. Pollux stared for a while and asked, "So, the rocks just slammed together, no control system?" Zate suggested, "Maybe send someone to run through first and see how fast it slams." Jason sighed. "I'd rather use birds. Birds talk less." After an hour of model making, they still didn't understand why the rocks clashed, but agreed. Experiment first. "How do we get through?" Phineas smiled. "Release a dove first. If it makes it through, you row close behind. If not, well, forget it." Zetes whispered, "This sounds like a TikTok challenge." Still, they tried. They picked the smallest, skinniest pigeon, but it had eyes that stared straight ahead. Orpheus tied a red ribbon to its leg and whispered, "If you make it through, I'll write you a heroic ballad. If not, I'll write your elegy." Castor gently stroked its back. "Your name is Lucky now. Fly like there's a nest on the other side." The pigeon flew. The rock slammed. It made it, losing only one tail feather. Jason yelled, "Row, full speed. Don't let a bird win." Castor screamed, "My arms aren't juice blenders." Atalanta cried while rowing, "Who threw me into this survival game?" Orpheus tried to play a motivating tune, but snapped a string. Pollux mumbled prayers in ancient Italian, Greek, and whistles. Zates flew circles overhead. "Keep going. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. Oh wait, it's the pigeon's tail." The ship shrieked like a symphony of panic. The rock slammed just behind the stern, spraying shards like rice noodles. But they made it through. Their breath caught. Everyone's hands shook. Orpheus croaked. "I've never seen Pollux pray that much. In ancient Italian, no less." Jason collapsed against the mast. "We made it. But next time someone remind me, never race a pigeon." The Argo sailed on, hearts lighter, hands sorer. And far in the distance, Colchis appeared, faint through the mist, like an ending no one dared to think about. Just when you think you've seen all the weird stuff Greece has to offer, wait until the Argo ship lands in Amazon territory. Not Amazon, the delivery service. Amazon, the deliverer of fear. A place where men aren't allowed to live. Women ride horses without saddles and maps. stop at the forest's edge with a note saying, "Don't go further if you like being intact." As soon as the ship docked, Jason ordered, "No one look anyone in the eye, and no one takes off anything else." But the order came too late, because right on the first stretch of sand, the Argo crew encountered a group of naked women on horseback, spears in hand, hair tied high, eyes sharp like they'd read every psychological report on each crew member. Orpheus nearly fell overboard. I should have stuck to music. Heracles, just back from his side quest, let out a dry chuckle. This is the kind of place where men should only whisper. But the real surprise, the Amazons didn't attack. They just circled around, watching. Then one, seemingly the leader, approached. She wore armor made of bark, a necklace of animal fangs, and a helmet shaped like an eagle's eye. "What do you bring? Words or weapons?" Jason took a deep breath. "We bring information and bread." The woman nodded. "Good, because we bring ears and bows." Both sides sat for a negotiation, stark naked, literally. No one dared move too fast. Orpheus set his lyre down and stepped back 3 paces. The conversation revolved around the route to Colchis, scammy kings, and sunscreen made from almond oil. Meanwhile, an Amazon silently sprinkled white powder around the negotiation area. Pollux asked, "What's that powder?" She replied, "Red ant powder. Anyone who sweats while lying, the ants will swarm them." Jason started itching at his ankle. Orpheus scratched his head nervously, voice rising. "I'm hiding nothing but a few unfinished love songs." Heracles glanced at Jason. "Are you nervous, or actually getting bitten?" Everyone started speaking, very slowly, very clearly, and very little. Turns out, the Amazons were excellent at geography and brutally honest. "This path has swamps, that one has snakes, but snakes avoid the honest." Jason nodded furiously. "We are the very image of truth, while secretly hiding 4 lamb meat pies in his bag." In the end, they were given directions, a pouch of anti-leech herbs, and a hand-drawn map, sketched with charcoal. Before they left, one Amazon walked up, gently, slowly. She didn't say anything, just stared at each man. Then suddenly, tossed a wolf-tooth necklace, smacking Heracles right on the forehead. Heracles rubbed his forehead. "I'm guessing this is a good luck charm," Orpheus whispered, "or a mark for the next target." Etched into it was a line, "Don't come back. If you survive, forget us." Orpheus quietly asked, "Do they want to be respected or erased?" Jason replied, "Both." The ship sailed away, no one daring to look back, and that night, no one told stories, no one played music, only the wind and silent glances between those who had just passed through a land that no one dares to draw. A land that doesn't need to prove it's terrifying, because simply existing is enough. From atop Olympus, Hera looked down. No judgment, no scorekeeping, no interference. She simply smiled and flipped a page in her notebook. 6th assist, unnecessary, they're better than me. And that is something a god rarely admits. After all the storms, the Argo crew finally landed in Colchis. The sky was gloomy. The trees grew thick, as if trying to hide a secret. Jason stepped down and adjusted his tunic. Everyone, keep a serious face. Here, a smile might be considered an insult. Orpheus tucked his lyre into its case. I'm hiding my soul too, just in case. King Aetes' palace didn't look like a castle. It looked like a metal forge. Everything was scorching hot. Walls made of black stone. Guards in red armor. Expressionless faces. And in the middle of the hall, Aetes, eyes like glowing embers, beard curling like goat horns. He said, "You want the golden fleece?" Jason answered, "Yes, and if possible, a cookie too." Aetes smirked. "If you want it, prove you're worthy. Go to the backyard where I keep the oxen." Everyone thought it was a metaphor, until they saw it. A vast yard with 2 fire-breathing bulls, skin like molten bronze, smoke puffing from their mouths, eyes blazing red. One bull stood still, gave a slight nod, like it had passed ethics class. The other one scraped the ground, growled, and every time Jason looked its way, it spat fire like, "One more look and I'll roast you." Orpheus whispered, "The left one looks introverted." The right one, clearly going through a rebellious phase. "Yoke them, plow this whole field, plant dragon teeth, and survive." Pollux swallowed hard. "I've never trained oxen, let alone hell oxen." Atalanta looked at Jason. "Want me to shoot tranquilizers or prayers?" Jason took a deep breath, then turned toward Medea. She was standing nearby, in the shadows. Daughter of King Aetes and priestess of Hecate. Her eyes looked at Jason like, "You won't survive, but I like how you try." "I'll help," she said, "if you promise not to run." Jason nodded, a nod that might burst into flames if the bull came too close. Medea handed him a jar of ointment. Before that, she stared at Jason for a while, long enough for Atalanta to squint. "You can survive if you listen, but only if you know when to stay quiet and when to risk everything." Jason blinked. "Are you talking about me or the bulls?" Medea didn't answer, but it seemed she hadn't decided either. "Rub this on. The bulls will smell it, but won't breathe fire. Unless you smile. Don't smile." Jason started, applying fire-resistant lotion. Orpheus muttered, "This world is turning into a dark fairy tale version of a children's book." Jason walked out. The bulls looked at him. No growls, no smoke, just hissing. He lifted the yoke. One bull nodded. The other snorted smoke from its nose. Jason yoked them. Atalanta exhaled. "I thought we just lost a leader." After sowing the dragon seeds, the ground trembled. From the soil rose cactus-shaped warriors, wearing iron armor and war masks. Aetes laughed out loud. "Oh, forgot to mention, my seeds grow soldiers." Jason turned to Medea. "What about anti-human ointment?" She winked. "Use your head." Jason grabbed a rock and threw it at the soldiers. They turned on each other. At first, it was light shoving. Then one shouted, "I'm the commander, follow me." The guy next to him barked, "I sprouted first, I'm in charge." Immediately, the whole batch of freshly grown warriors split into 2 factions. Swords clashed on shields, helmets butted heads. Jason and the crew just stood there, watching this internal civil war with zero outside effort. Orpheus whispered, "This is why seed packets need usage instructions." 5 minutes later, the field was quiet. Jason smelled like barbecue, but was still standing. 80s squinted. "Not bad, but I never said you'd get the fleece," Jason growled. "And I never said I'm going home empty-handed." The tension thickened, and Medea, standing between the two, was clearly thinking about eloping from Mount Olympus. Hera rested her chin in her hand, watching like it was a high school play. A boy smelling like burnt lotion, a girl with ointment and secrets, a king with a beard standing on edge. Mythical love triangle. I won't interfere. She flipped her notebook and added, "7th assist, unnecessary." He handled it, with a little magic and feminine luck. Then Hera turned to Artemis. "Pass me the tea. This drama's just getting good." Jason didn't know exactly what had just happened. He only knew he was still alive. The bulls didn't burn him. The cactus warriors handled each other, and Medea was still standing there. She didn't smile. She didn't turn away. She just looked. The kind of look that could make someone leave their entire homeland to follow. That night, Jason sat beside the ship's cabin. He couldn't close his eyes, not because of fear, but because he kept thinking about that look. Pollux came closer. There are 2 ways to deal with a dangerous woman. 1, run. 2, fall in love first, then run later. Jason didn't respond, because right at that moment, Medea appeared. Quiet as moonlight skimming water. "My father won't give you the golden fleece. I figured there's a dragon guarding it. It never sleeps." Silence, only the sound of waves. "I can lull it to sleep, but I need you to stay after we get it." Jason nodded. This time, not because he was brave, but because he was stupid. Midnight. Jason and Medea slipped away from the cabin. The Argo slept quietly like a windless dream. They crossed forests, climbed rocks, pushed past thorn fences, until in front of them stood an ancient oak, the golden fleece hanging from its branch. And below, a massive dragon curled up. Its skin looked like wet bronze scales, its eyes wide open, unblinking. Tied to the dragon's tail was a small bronze bell, bent and rusted. Each time it exhaled, the bell gave a faint chime. Medea said, "It doesn't sleep, but it dreams sometimes, and mostly nightmares." Jason swallowed hard. "So, the bell's an alarm?" "No, it only rings when the dragon remembers my father. That's a type of warning too." Jason stepped back. Medea calmly pulled out a small vial. Her hand trembled slightly. Not from fear of the dragon, but because she knew if Jason turned away, she wouldn't have the heart to go on. Sleeping potion made from dream sap, owl feathers, and my own tears. Not my strongest magic, just what I dared to use. She poured it into a tiny cup and flung it into the dragon's mouth. The dragon growled low, eyes glowing red, but its head slowly drooped. Medea whispered, "We have 1 minute." Jason climbed the tree. The oak creaked. His hand touched the fleece, soft, heavy, and warm, like it had a soul. He unhooked it, held it close. As he slid down, his foot slipped. One hand grabbed a branch. The other caught Medea's hand. That second, neither of them said a word. Just eye contact. Then both looked away, as if afraid. If they held on 1 second longer, they'd never let go. Back on the ground, Medea had the escape route ready. Run, now. And they ran. No looking back, no sighs. The Argo left shore that night. Aetes stood at the dock, pale with rage. No one said a word, just a slim shadow. Medea stood next to Jason. She had chosen. She had betrayed her father. She had used her own tears to lull a dragon to sleep, and traded it for a nameless promise from someone who might not be able to keep it. On the ship, Orpheus looked at Jason. You just earned a treasure and a woman willing to burn the world for you. Jason replied, I just hope I'm decent enough that she won't regret it. The sea was still, but inside them, something had just awakened. Not the dragon, but something even harder to control. Love. From atop Olympus, Hera flipped through her notebook. No score. No hearts. Just a line. Trust, the oldest magic. No spells, no fire, just courage. She turned to Athena. That girl used something stronger than any incantation, returning to Iolcos. Jason held the golden fleece, eyes sparkling, heart eager, and forgot the little detail that the throne was still occupied. Peleus, the usurper who murdered Jason's father, was still sitting on the throne, casually scratching his back with a silver spoon. Oh, the kid who lost a sandal, back now to demand a crown. Jason didn't reply, but Medea stepped forward, quiet, cold, and smiling. Lord Peleus, I bring you a gift, a spell for youth. In the great hall, a giant cauldron was set up. The fire crackled. Smoke rose thick with the scent of herbs and blind faith. Medea slit a ram's throat, dropped it in. Leaves, roots, a few drops of blood, and an incantation in ancient Hecate tongue. From the cauldron, a young lamb leapt out, white, healthy, and bleating. Peleus gaped. His daughters teared up. Father will be young again. No more back pain or hair loss. Medea nodded. You only have to do it yourselves. Belief is the most important ingredient. Peleus hesitated. But his daughters didn't. They stabbed. They sliced. They dropped him into the cauldron. Waited, watched. No one came out. No one turned young. Only the scent of scorched flesh and a silence that froze the room. Medea sat beside the cauldron, tucking her hair behind her ear. No smile, no tears, just a whisper from Olympus. Hera flipped her notebook. No score marked, no credit given, just a note. Mythical women don't kill. They let others do it themselves. She exhaled. Not magic, just a script. Nothing renews youth like the right person's death. Jason stood there, not speaking, not joyful, only feeling. Everything had been quiet for too long. Medea cleaned the cauldron. No regret, no explanation, just silence. Peleus didn't die from the cauldron. He died because his daughter stabbed him, and because he believed in a promise that was never clearly written. The people weren't sad. They were afraid, but not sad. After that night, No one played music. No one sang in the squares. They just closed their doors earlier, as if afraid their sleep might be broken by the sound of a boiling cauldron in a dream. Because under Pelias, Iolcos was only a place for taxes and penalties. Now, Jason took the throne. A breeze whispered through the temple. In the scent of incense, Jason smelled familiar herbs, the smell of the old cauldron, the smell of faith boiled to the bone. He sat on the throne, then shifted back just a little. Fire may burn out, but ash stays. The fleece was hung in Hera's temple, and Medea, she wore no crown. Only a red cord, woven from her own hair. Orpheus said, "Sometimes justice doesn't need a courtroom, just memory." Jason asked, "And what if that memory fades?" Medea replied, "Then we retell it, in blood, if we must." Corinth, a city of white rooftops, giant statues, and laws so strict they choked the air. Jason and Medea moved here after the Iolcos incident. No one welcomed them. No one banned them. They were just watched. People looked at Medea like she was a female version of fire. Beautiful, but scarring. Jason was welcomed like a hero, but a hero from elsewhere. At first, things were fine. Medea brewed herbal tea. Jason trained the local youth. Together, they told stories about the sleeping dragon, the blazing fleece, and journeys no one believed were real. The Corinthians listened, smiled, but always kept one step away. Then King Creon invited Jason to the palace. "We want you to marry Glass, the princess of Corinth." Jason hesitated. "But I already have a wife." Creon patted his shoulder. "Exactly. That's a problem. According to Corinthian law, only those married to a citizen could own land. If Jason wanted to live as a full Greek, he had to choose. The night before meeting Creon, Jason sat in the inn's parlor, wrote a note, then crumpled it. "You've always been stronger than I thought, and that scares me." The note never reached Medea. It drifted out the window, fell into the night, a foreign wife or land. Jason chose silence. Medea knew, not because Jason confessed, but because every woman knows when her husband starts speaking less. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She only asked, "This time, do you want me to help?" Jason didn't answer. On the day Jason announced his engagement to Glass, the entire city feasted. Medea stayed home. She brewed a fragrant potion. Her hands trembled. For the first time in a long while, not from anger, but because she knew what she was about to do couldn't be undone. She wrapped the gift by hand, then summoned a servant to deliver it to the palace. Inside, a wedding dress and a fire no one saw coming, a week before the engagement. Glaucer had met Medea at the market. She bowed, genuinely, without pride. Medea smiled, softly, as if she already knew everything would burn. Glauca wore the dress, laughed, danced, then screamed, then burst into flames. Creon rushed in to save his daughter. He burned with her. Jason came home. No Glass, no wedding, only Medea, sitting there beside their 2 children. She said, "I helped, one last time." And then vanished. Corinth still gleamed white, still smelled of lemons and fresh stone. Only now, no one sang at weddings anymore. No one touched gifts from strangers. Corinthian mothers started telling their sons, marry a good girl, not someone who knows spells. Bookstores closed early. Teachers of ancient texts had no more female students. People began to fear. Knowledge mixed with feeling. And no one dared speak Medea's name. They only whispered, she used to be a hero's wife. But then, she burned the very definition of wife down herself. No one saw Medea leave Corinth. No horse, no chariot, no background music. Only small footprints, dusted with ash. They said she flew east, or vanished into the forest, or became a spirit no one dares to worship. No one knew. Only this was certain. After a woman like that, even the wind didn't dare blow straight. Jason stayed. No wife, no land. Some nights, Jason dreamed of her. No words, no firelight. Only dusk, drizzling rain, and Medea standing beside him, not looking at him. He asked, "Are you still angry?" She replied, "No. I just forgot how to forgive." No one wanted stories anymore. In the lullaby from Colchis, two names repeat, Phrixus and Phobos, the children of wind and fire. No one knew who they were. No one asked. Only the old folks stared into the distance and said, "Those are the children who never got to grow up right." The golden fleece, hung in Hera's temple, faded in the sunlight, like the echo of a golden age. Hera looked down, added a line to her divine journal. Justice came, but it was justice that knew pain. She gazed up at the twilight sky. There are heroines who will never be carved into statues, because people are too afraid to remember them. Athena asked, "Did anyone learn anything?" Hera replied, "Yes. Don't abandon the one who sacrificed for you." In Colchis, a small shrine was built. No sign. No one dared speak the goddess's name there. Visitors came only to whisper, "Please don't let me love the wrong person." At the last moon of the year, a girl with tangled hair came to the shrine. She carried a sprig of mugwort, a stone. She whispered, "Give me a heart strong enough, but still able to feel pain." Then she left. No one remembered her face, but the scent of mugwort lingered, and in the night, amid incense smoke and damp earth, some said they saw the shadow of a woman with flowing hair, cradling a child made of light. She passed through their dreams, asked nothing, blamed no one, only left behind a tightness in the chest. Because some people love us so deeply, they have nothing left to lose, only stories left for others to tell. Her name was Medea, and this is all that remains after love. Next story, Prometheus Fire. In Greek mythology, he was a giant god, son of Iapetus and Themis, brother of Atlas, Epimetheus, and Menoetius. He was famous for his intelligence, and he was the one who created humankind, initially as clay figures, then secretly breathed life into them against Zeus's will. He helped humanity in many ways, like disguising sacrificial offerings, hiding the best parts under bones and entrails to trick Zeus. and he famously stole fire from the god Helios and gave it to mankind. Zeus punished him by chaining him to a rock, where an eagle would eat his liver every day, and every night the liver would regenerate. Eventually, Prometheus was freed by Heracles during his 11th labor, the quest for the golden apples. His myth appears in several ancient sources, where Prometheus is seen as playing a pivotal role in the early history of humanity. You are dirt, not the kind that grows carrots. You are the sticky, damp mud beneath Olympus, nameless, useless, infinitely squishy. And then one day, a god notices you. Not Zeus. Zeus was busy hurling thunderbolts and punishing exes. But Prometheus, he didn't like seeing meaninglessness and just walking away. He bent down, squished, shaped, molded, not to make bricks, but to make you. Before he sculpted, he chose the clay, like a chef picking ingredients for cake. Not too dry, too hard to knead, not too wet, would bubble when breathing life into it. He picked the kind of mud that was pliable, soft, and had a scent of potential, a kind of clay that, when held, made Prometheus whisper, this one will question the meaning of life after just 3 faceplants. A miniature replica of the divine. No powers, no wings, just 2 legs, 2 hands, and a head very sensitive to criticism. He sculpted you from clay, shaped eyes that could look up, a mouth that could ask, who am I? And a heart that panics. And then Prometheus breathed into you. Not a gust, not sparkly, just a soft puff. But it made you open your eyes, sit up, and do the first thing humans would do for thousands of years to come. You blinked. The first light made you squint like a glitched camera. You looked at Prometheus and thought, who's this guy? Then you sat up, rubbed your forehead, and asked, do I have a name yet? Prometheus smiled, didn't speak, but his eyes said, not yet, but one day. It's cold. You didn't have fire. You didn't know how to hunt. You couldn't tell which plants were poisonous and which were spar herbs. You moved like a 4-legged animal standing up for the first time. Awkward and kinda off. Prometheus watched you fall into a mud puddle for the 3rd time and sighed. You saw a rabbit, you chased it, fell. You saw fruit, ate it, got food poisoning. You saw rain, cried because you got wet. Prometheus nodded, mentally jotting down. Emergency update scheduled next week. Oh gods, what have I made? But he didn't abandon you. Unlike other gods, who just love to create and then ghost you, Prometheus looked at you with the eyes of a father. Not perfect, but mine. And so, he helped. He taught you how to make fire from rocks, though you kept hitting the wrong ones. He taught you how to use sticks to cook fish, though you kept eating it raw and crying later. He taught you that being afraid of the dark wasn't weakness. It was a survival instinct. You started learning. From that first tiny flame, you learned what warmth meant. From that first bite of bread, you learned what fullness was. From your first question, you learned what yearning felt like. You were clay, but clay with a soul. A lump of mud that could dream, hum nonsense, and say things like, if I don't have my morning coffee, I'll die. back when you curled up to sleep for the first time, your back shaped like a question mark, still hugging that rock you called best friend. Prometheus stood silently. He watched you, that fragile thing he shaped from his own loneliness. And he suddenly realized, I didn't make humans just so they could live. I made them so I wouldn't be the only one listening to the silence. And Prometheus, the one who defied Zeus to give you life, just stood there, wondering why he felt so proud, even though you were clumsy, even though you yawned during sacred ceremonies, even though you used the fire he gave you to burn, your own hair. He knew. You were the beginning of something greater than gods. You're cold. Not the kind of cold where you can just turn on the heater. It's the kind of cold that stabs your spine and drains all the warmth from the tender soul of a clay creature that just learned how to shiver. You're curled up under a damp rock. The wind whistles through every undefined pore of your body, and Prometheus, the one who created you, stands there, arms crossed over his chest, as if he, too, feels your cold. Prometheus had taught you how to live, how not to eat the stuff with purple stripes, how not to step on fire. But that was the problem. You had no fire. Zeus wouldn't allow it, because fire meant power, something only the gods could wield. Giving fire to humans, in Zeus's eyes, was like handing a lighter to a monkey. Sooner or later, the forest burns. And Prometheus knew that. He knew it very well. But he also knew one more thing. Without fire, you would die. Not just from cold, but because the darkness would swallow every chance you had to become human. Prometheus stood before the flame. It wasn't just hot, it was alive. It whispered things only gods were allowed to hear. And he thought, if I give this to them, they will know pain. But if I don't, they will die. Fire could burn houses, but it could also warm a muddy heart curled up in its first encounter with night. And he chose. He chose to be cursed, rather than watch you freeze. So one night, when Helios had driven the sun chariot back to the garage, Prometheus crept toward the place no one dared to touch, the eternal hearth of the gods. He took a hollow reed, bent down, touched a tiny flame. His fingers burned, but he didn't cry out. The flame curled up inside the reed like a child not yet sure who it belonged to. Prometheus took it away, sneaky as the most well-meaning thief in history. No glory, no medals, just a quiet flame and a silent promise. Don't be afraid anymore, my little muddy children. The next morning, you saw fire. You didn't know what it was, only that it was warm. You reached your hand out. The heat made you flinch, your eyes wide. Prometheus smiled. It doesn't bite. If it burns, just run. And so you learned warmth. You poked a stick into the fire. It caught flame. You screamed. You blew on it. It grew. You smacked it. Ash flew into your eyes. You cried, then laughed, then poked it again. Prometheus watched and sighed. Fire is immortal, but humans probably need a few updates. Then you learn to roast things. Then you learn to take one step back from what you didn't understand. You no longer shivered every night. You started telling stories around the fire. Nonsense, ramblings, but they were the beginning of language. That night, Zeus sat on his throne, staring at the light on Earth like he was watching an ex's Instagram story. His eyes narrowed, his brows twitched. They're warm? No one gave them permission. The other gods bowed their heads. Only Prometheus, though not present, was holding his breath, waiting for the consequences. That night, Zeus looked down. He saw fire glowing across the earth. He saw humans dance, laugh, and live like they were allowed to. He knew who had done it, and he began to plot, not to take the fire back, but to tear out the liver of someone who dared challenge power with compassion. But that's a story for another chapter. From that night on, humans no longer just shivered. You began to tell stories, to hold each other close by the light, and fire, the stolen gift, became humanity's second heart. Not just something to warm, but something to remind us we are not alone in the dark. Tonight, just remember one thing. You were once cold, but someone stole the light, just so you could be warm. You thought early humans just sat by fires, ate roasted roots, and stargazed. Well, they did, until someone decided to troll the gods by rearranging meat and bones. Prometheus saw humanity fumbling with chunks of meat, not because they were hungry, but because of ritual. They wanted to offer a sacrifice to Zeus, totally normal for that time. The only question was, which part of the animal should go to the gods, and which part should humans keep? And you know Prometheus, he didn't like unfair rules. If the gods sat on high, enjoying fat, while humans gnawed on bones, where's the divinity in that kind of compassion? Prometheus walked into the makeshift kitchen. If you could call a pile of rocks by a fire a kitchen, he didn't cook. He staged 2 plates, 2 extremes. 1 plate of savory meat, hidden like a well-justified sadness. 1 plate of fatty globs, polished like a Tinder profile. Prometheus laid them out. 1 dish looked rich and gleaming, golden fat glistening, topped with smooth skin. The other was full of red, juicy meat, but hidden under a pile of intestines that looked like yesterday's trash. Zeus stepped forward. He looked at both plates. And like most powerful men, he didn't ask, "What's inside?" He judged with his eyes and with the kind of ego that's never been trolled. Fat is luxury. Fat is king. Everyone knows that. He chose. He nodded. Prometheus turned away, not to laugh, but to hide the satisfaction. Zeus had picked the fat and bones, and from that day forward, by ritual agreement, the gods only received bones and fat. The good parts, humanity kept them. Prometheus stood nearby, stone-faced, as if he hadn't just trolled the most powerful god in the cosmos. Zeus crunched bones between his teeth, swallowed cold, greasy lumps of fat, and realized he'd been played. You, on behalf of all mankind, watched Zeus eat bones, slowly, gracefully. You didn't understand why he chose that plate. You didn't understand why Prometheus smiled. But you knew one thing. Tonight, you got the good stuff. So you clapped. Just a little. But it was the first applause ever given for a cosmic prank. No one laughed out loud. No one dared clap too long. Only Prometheus, in his heart, marked a silent tally in his journal. Today, humanity won. That night, Zeus didn't sleep. He unrolled a scroll titled, "List of People to Handle This Year." The name Prometheus was written in red ink, underlined 3 times, with a tiny skull icon. Zeus muttered, "Bones, fine, but this humiliation, unforgivable." And no, he didn't forget, not a chance. You took his light, you mocked him with a fat and bone buffet. You think there won't be consequences. Oh, the next chapter will show you. The gods hold grudges forever. No thunder, no public statement from Mount Olympus. Just a morning. Prometheus woke up and saw chains. Prometheus opened his eyes. His arms didn't move. He thought, maybe I slept in a weird position. Then he saw the chains. Then the stone. Then the sky, with no way out. Ah, today's the day it starts. No one knew when he was captured, but by sunrise, he was already chained to the cliffs of Caucasus, caught between open skies and cold winds. No bed, no cushion, just stone, wind, and the silence of divine punishment from afar. Prometheus saw a shadow, not clouds, but a winged omen. It didn't fly. It glided, as if even the sky didn't want to be in its way. Prometheus didn't scream, didn't tremble. He closed his eyes, not out of fear, but so you wouldn't see it in your dreams. Then came the eagle, not a cute little bird, but one the size of a truck, with talons sharp enough to slice hope. It didn't screech. It didn't need to. It dove, silent, like Zeus's fury itself. Then it tore. Prometheus's liver was ripped apart, not like a piece of him, but like the price of his love. You thought he screamed. He didn't. He clenched his teeth and endured. At night, the liver grew back, not fast, not gently. Each cell seemed to whisper, "Are you sure you want to keep doing this?" But Prometheus's body didn't answer. It just kept working, like an old clock still ticking, even if no one watched the hands, as if even his body refused to die, because there was still work to do. Next morning, torn again, regrown again, pain again. No visitors, no rescue, just the loop, playing like a stuck video. You know the kind, one scene over and over, and you can't hit pause. Later, they said, that was his punishment. But maybe it was a reminder of the courage of someone who loved humanity more than his own divine status. A reminder of the price of not staying silent when faced with injustice. A reminder that endurance isn't always to win, but to avoid becoming a cold-hearted god. And if there's ever a night you feel cold, feel punished by life for simply doing what's right, remember this. Someone once endured pain again and again, just so you could sit by a fire and tell your story. No trumpets, no arches of triumph, just a man, shoulders broader than the sun, holding a makeshift club, stepping on mountain rocks like gravity didn't exist. Heracles. He didn't come to save anyone. Seriously, Heracles didn't smile, didn't think about glory, just thought, another stupid quest. His hands still smelled like manure from the last labor. His feet ached, his sandals torn at the heel from stepping on a snake. But he kept going, because someone gave the order. Heracles was on his way to complete a task. Retrieve golden apples from the edge of the world, by command of a king who didn't understand the difference between delegation and exploitation. But as he passed through the Caucasus Range, he heard the wind howl, like someone sighing through a torn liver. He looked up, saw Prometheus, a man bound, not for crimes, but for kindness. No dialogue, no soundtrack. Heracles lifted his bow, took an arrow tipped with Hydra's venom, and shot. The arrow flew, no wobble, no miss. It pierced the center of the wing. The eagle didn't cry. It just stopped. Like when you hit X on a browser tab that's been open for 3 days. Simple, but freeing. The eagle didn't scream. It fell, straight, fast, snapping mid-air. Prometheus didn't shout, but a chain inside the heart of humanity broke. Heracles climbed up. The chains were rusted, cold like old memories. He reached out, and it wasn't just iron. It was loneliness turned solid. He broke the chains bare-handed, and when Prometheus collapsed into him, he said quietly, "Don't thank me. I still have apples to find." And just like that, the god who had been bound for thousands of years was freed by a guy just completing a side quest. History loves telling stories of heroes born to save the world. But sometimes, the world is saved by someone just trying to do the right thing and move on. Some heroes wear no capes, have no theme music, no spotlight. They show up just in time, then disappear, never looking back. And if you've ever done something kind that no one remembered, you're more like Heracles than you think. You don't need to know you're a hero. You just need to not walk past someone who's bound, simply for doing good. And if tonight you feel like you're alone in being kind, trying to do the right thing in a tired world, remember, there are people like Prometheus still waiting, and people like Heracles who stop just for a moment, but change everything. You don't have to be great. Just don't look away. After being freed, Prometheus didn't return to Olympus, didn't file complaints, didn't appear on a divine talk show. He stayed quiet. He didn't celebrate, didn't boast. He just stood, watching fire burn in a poor family's hearth. Watched a child hold a hot potato, no longer crying from the cold. And he nodded. If I had to choose again, I'd do it the same. And he returned to humanity. They asked him, "Why give us fire? Why not keep yourself safe?" Prometheus looked at them, then at the fire burning in a stone stove, burning in a child's eyes, burning in the stories elders told as night fell. The other gods said he was crazy. Some laughed, some shook their heads, but Prometheus didn't answer. For some things, only humans understand, and he chose their side, and he said, because you needed something that couldn't be stolen. He didn't choose pain, but he accepted it, because he knew gods live forever. But humans need hope to live each day. Prometheus never wanted thanks, no statues, no glory, just for you to stay near the fire, to tell each other kind things, and not let it go out before morning. Prometheus didn't stay long, but each night, when you sit by the fire, when you try to understand something bigger than yourself, you're talking to him, not with words, but by still moving toward the light, even knowing the dark gets jealous, And if one day you ask, why should I keep trying? Remember, there was a God who chose to have his liver eaten every day just so you could feel warmth and understanding. If Prometheus were here tonight, across from that small flame in your room, he wouldn't ask questions. He wouldn't tell you to be strong, wouldn't pressure you to stay positive, wouldn't suggest sleeping early, or remind you to eat a healthy breakfast. He'd just sit, listen to you, say things you've never said out loud. He wouldn't interrupt, wouldn't nod in pity. He'd just be there, a God who'd been torn apart, who'd survived loneliness stretching across millennia, leaning in toward you, as if you were the only voice worth hearing in the world. And when you stop, halfway through, hesitant from shame or from not knowing how to name the pain, he wouldn't laugh. He'd just close his eyes, nod slightly, and whisper, I felt that way too. You don't have to believe it. Just let the fire keep burning. And one day, in the wind, in your thoughts, or in the sound of dry tears on your pillow, you'll realize you are never truly alone. And even if no one remembers what Prometheus did, if even one person like you still keeps the fire each night,